Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. We'll be waiting a couple more minutes to have a couple more people join, so thank you for your patience.
I'm going to try putting that in my go-to meeting. No, I'm not even on. Oh.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening for a discussion about the Cornerstone Partnership, a joint initiative between Children's Aid Society of Toronto and Yonge Street Mission. Before we start, I'd like to remind you that if you're not speaking, to please mute your microphone. Before we begin the discussion, I'd like to invite Farrell Hall, Children's Aid Society of Toronto's Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, to read the land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Lee, and good evening, everyone. So we'd like to begin by first acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, and most recently, the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. The territory was the subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Iroquois Confederacy and the Ojibwe and allied nations to peaceably share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. The territory is also covered by the Upper Canada Treaties. Today, the meeting place of Toronto, from the Haudenosaunee word Toronto, is still home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island, and we are so grateful to have the opportunity to work and meet in this territory. So we acknowledge that we walk upon the traditional territories and original nations of this land, whose children and families continue to cry out for justice. And we are mindful of the need to reconcile our history and relations with Indigenous peoples. And we're especially mindful of the 2015 Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action to redress the legacy of child welfare on Indigenous families and communities.
Thank you so much, Farrell. In addition to hearing again from Farrell, this evening you will also be joined by Marcia Shelton, Director of Cornerstone Family Services at Yonge Street Mission, Greg Nunes, a participant of the Cornerstone Partnership, Donna Alexander, a social worker at the Center for Addiction and Mental Health, and Mahesh, the Chief Operating Officer at Children's Aid Society of Toronto. Following the discussion, we'll have a question and answer period. Please send through any questions during the presentation using the question panel on the right side of your screen. To do so, Simply click on Send to All Staff, type your question, and click Send. We will try to get to every question. However, if we do not get to yours, we will follow up with you individually over email. Just to repeat that, to send a question, simply click on Send to All Staff, type your question, and click Send. And now to begin, I'd like to invite Farrell back on the screen to start off the conversation. Thank you.
Thanks again, Lee. I'm back. So, welcome, friends. Great to have you here joining us. And so, before we discuss the Cornerstone Partnership, I thought it was important to set the context and to quickly discuss the existing anti-Black racism that continues to persist in our country and in our city. So on top of the radical changes to the way that we live and work due to COVID-19, in the past 6 weeks, the realities of anti-Black violence have been thrust in our faces and cannot be ignored. For many, the murder of George Floyd and the acts of violence that have followed have brought us to a new level of recognition, pain, exposure, awakening, and determination. As we reflect on these events, it's really important to remind ourselves that anti-Black racism is alive and well in Canada, and it has been for the entire existence of our nation. Because we are not Canada the good, we're most often Canada the subtle. Canada's history of systemic racism has been woven into policies and practices of federal to municipal governments, social services, and agencies like ours. This racism has come in the form of immigration policies, broken promises, segregated schools, discriminatory employment practices, streaming racialized kids in schools, acts of police violence, and many other practices. In recent years, we've heard an echo hit us back in the face that sounds a whole lot like all lives matter when we've been shouting Black Lives Matter. The pattern of anti-Black violence has always been there, but too few have taken the time to notice. But now everyone has paid attention, and many are searching for what to do and how to respond. So while the second pandemic of anti-Black racism has reverberated around the globe, we also know that, like many social service agencies, it's been deeply embedded in the practices of our agency, Children's Aid Society of Toronto. And at a time when 8.5% to 9% of the population self-identifies as Black, 40+% of the children and youth in the care of CAS of Toronto self-identify as Black. But this is not news to our agency, that we have had a history and record of overrepresentation of Black children and youth in care. We've been on a journey over the past few years to eliminate disparity and disproportionality in our service delivery and outcomes. So as we continue this journey, we're focused on addressing the why behind the systemic bias that has resulted in a disproportionate number of Black youth and families involved in our child welfare agency. The fundamental causes of a disproportionate number of Black families being referred, investigated, and serviced by CAS of Toronto includes deep-seated issues of poverty, compounded by systemic racism, and preconceived ideas about a parent's ability to care for their child. And we know through feedback and discussion that our Black clients experience over-surveillance, assumptions of criminal activity, harsher enforcement of policies, and other negative impacts, assumptions, and stereotypes. And this creates a disproportionate number of Black children and youth in our care. eventually leading to potentially negative outcomes, such as family trauma, distress and disturbance that can persist from generation to generation, or a child in care experiencing compounding challenges such as issues with housing, education, employment, mental health, and the criminal justice system. But as an agency, we're working to identify our deep-seated biases, our discriminatory practices, and we're taking a proactive approach to eliminate disparity in our work. So in 2019, we introduced championing diversity, equity, and inclusion as one of our 3 strategic directions that will guide our work over a 3-year period. And this has led us to ask questions. How do we address disproportionality in our work? How do we become stronger allies to the Black community? And how do we create positive outcomes for Black families before, during, and after they've been involved with CAS of Toronto? And driven by these questions, we have introduced proactive and reactive programs and practices designed to strengthen the capacity of Black families to care for their children, including what we're speaking about today, the Cornerstone Partnership. So I'll now pass the mic and camera over to Marcia, who will introduce this innovative joint initiative. Marcia.
Thank you very much, Farrell. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to join us today to hear about this unique partnership that has been formed over the past year between Yonge Street Mission and Children's Aid Society of Toronto. The content that Farrell shared about is vital to the work that we're doing, the knowledge that we have gained over the time period working with our families. Beginning in 2019, the Cornerstone Partnership, being an innovative service with CAS, we being funded by the foundation, which we're grateful for, that allowed us to work directly with and focus on our Black families. The reason being is that, as Farrell mentioned, that these are families that are involved with the child welfare system, either presently or they have been, and it's a recurring cycle within my Black community, within the community that I represent, the community that Yonge Street Mission also works with. And so this partnership has allowed us to address systemic barriers, address the challenges that our families face every day. So some of those challenges are looking at reducing the number of Black children and youth coming into care, reducing the length of time that they're in foster care homes, also to mitigate referrals, re-referrals, re-entering into the child welfare system. These are all some of the important initiatives and points that we are wanting to address here collectively through this partnership, through the collaboration, and really celebrating the bravery of Children's Aid Society to take this on, to work with Yonge Street Mission. We're a faith-based organization, and this is what's innovative about our partnership. And so what did we learn from Yonge Street Mission? In working with street-involved youth, I started my career at Yonge Street Mission at Evergreen Center for Street Youth. And it's the involvement with street-involved youth and being in the Connecting Youth to Work program at that time that I realized and noticed a pattern where street-involved youth had challenges around education. They were isolated. Many of them were involved in the child welfare system, or they were crown wards themselves and they're exiting. But a large amount of those youth were Black youth. And as a Black woman and as a mother, it moved my heart. And it was a privilege to be able to work for YSM and have an opportunity to support the Black community in this way. And many of those youth in the program, as they started to progress through this employment program, the readiness, providing life skills at Evergreen Center, through the programs, that the employment services that we had there, it was in that time that I, through case management, through as an employment counselor, I realized that whenever those youth started to progress well, go back to school, start their education, start to get work experience, and they felt hope was regained and they were getting that moral support, they were getting the clinical support. When I saw this type of wraparound care needed, majority of the time, those young people wanted to reconnect, reunite with their parents. And it didn't matter what the situation was, there was this innate desire for them to be reunited with their family. And at times, we recognized that their parents were still struggling with some of their own demons of the past, their own brokenness, their own wounds, whether it's from within the Black community, it was racism within the system, systemic oppression, the barriers around being Black men, women, youth. Their parents were going through those things themselves, the intergenerational trauma and the patterns that have been passed on, not just from present day, but as far back as far as slavery, the civil rights movement. All of these play into the brokenness and the wounds and the trauma of our community. And recognizing that some of those parents were still struggling with them and the youth were growing, we knew that some of them, it would not end up in the way that they thought, that it would be a positive ending. And that's when we realized that there was a lot of work to do. There's a lot of healing. There was a lot of strengthening of families. And we believe families are, healthy families are the foundation to healthy communities. And if many of you know and are aware from the media, from just what we're seeing now in this climate, which Farrell had alluded to, that there's a disconnect within our family units and there's isolation, there's abandonment. And what exasperates some of the biases, the implicit and explicit biases around the stigma of Black families, the stereotypes, the lack of understanding of our historical trauma, that we need to recognize that poverty also exasperates that. And our role at Yonge Street Mission and our partnership with Children's Aid Society is to build a safety net and an avenue of learning and growing and addressing these barriers and looking for the way to connect family. Our youth and children, they're craving for relationship. And if I could appeal to your own family units, your own community, you yourself would recognize that where you are today is because you had a mother, a father, a sibling, an aunt, an uncle, a grandparent, somebody within your close-knit community cheering you on. So could you imagine some of our parents not having that and knowing that their children are in care and they don't have the supports, the knowledge, the skills, the resources to be able to build that safety net for them? That's what's important. So supporting from the start. How do we do that? How does a young Black single parent learn to parent without healthy role models? What are the root causes that play in the lives of some of our families and how those can be addressed? How do we stop the cycle for Black families and restore the family unit? These are questions, probing questions. And I want you to ask yourself those questions, because at the end of the day, we need each other to shift situations. We have to work collectively. No man is an island unto themselves. No agency is an island unto themselves. And our partnership with Children's Aid Society and ourselves and YSM is allowing us to do this meaningful work. The realization that the family unit needs access to education, access to food services, access to housing supports, access to employment training. In order for us to break the cycle, intervention needs to be done sooner than later. We have to be preventative and we have to be proactive. And this is what this unique partnership is allowing. It's allowing the vulnerable families that are involved with CAS of Toronto to connect to YSM through a referral process. And I really, I have to say that I am proud to know that we can be a catalyst for change, a system change, policy change, to move from a knee-jerk reaction to crisis, but to start to do preventative, to form a place of healing. And we recognize that in order for us to do this effectively, we do recognize that there are children need safety. We need to validate the voice of children. We have to create safe spaces. And we have to recognize that poverty plays a huge role in that. And so how can we best support? What can we do to break the cycle within these families? There's many avenues of doing that. And I mentioned some of them around wraparound support from a holistic lens, working with the whole family, not just the parent, but getting to know the youth, getting to know the children, allowing them to voice their pain, share their fears. It's about building relationship. It's about creating space to dialogue and utilizing and recognizing the tools that Children's Aid Society brings from their investigations, and recognizing the signs of safety, and really equipping the parents, helping them understand the Child Welfare Act, helping them understanding parenting in a Canadian context, in a Western world context. If they're a new family to the country, a new immigrant looking for their status, for those that are in shelters, helping them find homes. These are the things, advocacy. There's so much that we have to address, all of the different hoops that the parents and families have to jump through. Restoration is key. How do we restore something that is broken? It takes time. It takes commitment. It takes allies, people that understand and not just label and come in with their biases around what a Black family is about. Recognizing that there are challenges. We're looking to reunite the parents with their children, increasing access visits, holding parents accountable to the change and the commitment. No parent ever wakes up saying that they want to be a terrible parent. Everybody wants to be a great parent. So restoration, mitigating and minimizing investigations. These are the things that we're looking for. So those are some of the things that we're doing with the partnership with Toronto Children's Aid and Yonge Street Mission. And so I hope that you've been enlightened about how we can work together. As you're here tonight listening, we are here appealing to you because we really believe in the work we're doing. We want to model the importance of collaboration. We want to model that in order to change the narrative of our Black families, we have to create spaces and supports, wraparound supports around mental health and counseling services and all of those different types of supports that our families need. And tonight you're going to hear about a phenomenal father and his journey of his supports that he's received through Children's Aid Society and Toronto and Yonge Street Mission. I want to welcome Greg Nunes with us. He's a father that I got to know, and he's just amazing. And we're just going to hear his story tonight as he shares the challenges and barriers and the hopes and the dreams of our partnership. Welcome, Greg. How are you?
Hi, Marcia. I'm fine, thanks. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm so excited that you're with us tonight and that you're willing to share your story. And I want to first acknowledge your bravery and your courage. And I know that your story tonight is going to inspire many. It's also going to shed light onto the challenges of parenting as a Black father, right? And what it takes to be able to beat all odds and to recognize the importance of the partnership that we have with the Children's Aid Society of Toronto. All right, so I have a couple questions to ask you, and feel free to just elaborate and just, share your story, because I know it's an impactful story, and I've been impacted by your life as I've gotten to know you over the past year. So how did you become involved with the partnership between CAS of Toronto and Yonge Street Mission?
Basically being a crown wardship myself, I became involved again with CAS when I understood that I was having my son. And throughout that time with CAS, having faced hardships and challenges, being a Black father myself, the CAS eventually referred me to the agency YSM, and that's how I became involved.
Oh, awesome. So I'm going to ask you a question. What were your thoughts when they were referring you to Young Street Mission?
Initially, my first thought was that they were just sending me somewhere to basically waste time, but that was not the case. When I got there, I got a worker, and I sat down with the worker, and we were able to have a meeting with CAS, and CAS was able to highlight some of the issues and things within myself that I needed to change in order to see a successful reunification with my son.
Okay, that's great. Awesome. So I want you to share with that partnership being referred to Young Street Mission from CAS, right? And that's an indication of they understand the work that we do, and we also understand the role that they need to play in ensuring safety for children, right? And the importance of having a healthy family unit. Can you share how your life is different for you through this partnership? What has really changed for you drastically?
What has changed is that I'm now a father full time, and I have more responsibility as a father. Whereas before, when my son was still in CAS, I didn't have as much responsibility. So more so that I have more responsibility now that my son's returned back into my care. That's what's changed for me, is that I have more responsibility now as a father.
So as you mentioned about more responsibility, thank you for sharing that. But as you mentioned about more responsibility, what besides being a father, what other responsibilities was presented to you from prior to not having your son to you having your son now?
Just basically keeping up my bills, groceries, and activities, stuff to do with my son, like going to the park, because with everything being limited because of the COVID-19, there really isn't much to do other than going to the park and stuff, and also reuniting with family that we haven't seen in the past as well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So as a Black father, I want to be able for you to highlight that in this next question of you were connected to a man-to-man program with one of our staff. And as a Black father, how does man-to-man impact your life? And how has it helped you?
See, man-to-man's helped me in a lot of ways, because it gave me the courage. It basically built up my confidence and the courage to deal with the issues that I faced with CAS, and also being as a young Black father. And they also helped me to just get the advice that I needed, and also built the sense of community that I was kind of lacking with my family. So the counseling piece really helped out for me, because I felt by going to man and talking about my issues, I was able to function better as a Black man and a father too.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Greg. Because I've gotten to know you over the course of the year, I know that emotionally your journey was very challenging, right? So what what are some of the things that have changed for you around yourself, how you view yourself as a father, a Black father? How are you managing and coping? Because I can only imagine the trauma that you must have experienced as a Black male, and we are in an interesting climate right now. So how's your life now? What does it mean to you now, with the successes and the reunification of your son?
My life, it means I mean, I don't know how to answer that question.
So how's your life now, in your own words, right? Because you alluded to how things used to be, but what's happening now? What is the great experiences you're having right now? What's your plans? What have you learned? Yeah, how is life now for you with your son? You talked about it being busy, but on a deeper level. How is it emotionally? How is it with your confidence? How is it with your sense of presence and connection?
Honestly, it feels great because, I didn't have a father myself. I was stuck in the system for quite some time. So, just having my son with me, it feels really, I can't really explain the feeling, how great, how positive it really feels because, you know, it's, I thought at one point I was going to lose my son. And, through the partnership with CAS and YSM, they made it happen where my son came back. So it really feels good. I feel proud of myself because, you know, I thought I was gonna lose him, and then I just kept at it, kept working hard. I kept believing that, one day things were gonna change, and then the day came. So,
Mhm.
I feel proud of myself. Words can't really describe how the feeling feels, but trust me, when they're in their bed sleeping and you're just watching them, that you get that heart warm felt feeling, like feels good, feels really, it's almost like a little high. Yeah, but it's great.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Greg, I thank you so much, and I'm so joy filled. As you said, words can't express. I am, as a Black mother, as somebody of part of the Black community like yourself, just seeing you gives me hope. As a Black father, being present, desiring to be with your son. Your last words, what would you want to leave with? If there's any fathers out there, what would you want to say to fathers, and especially to Black fathers that have children that are involved within the system?
Basically, if you know that the lifestyle you live warranted the CAS involvement, change it. Change it for your children's sake, because if you want to see your child survive and be successful and stuff, you have to be there, and you know you won't be able to witness that if they're adopted out. So the one thing I must say is that change the lifestyle if you can, and just try to have faith and believe that don't fight the system, work with them, because YSM, that's what they're there for. They're there to work with the CAS to help you get your child back. So just basically have faith and, work with the system, don't fight them, and change the lifestyle, because, if you can't do none of these things, then, you won't be able to get your child back. So just try your best, believe and have courage, because I got my son back, and this could be you too, So I know it's hard, but you can do it. Trust me. And you'll be surprised when people see you with your son. You know, you'll be surprised. People will think, "Oh wow, you have a child," yeah, so that's what I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing the importance of bravery and effort and collaboration and working together. And that's the whole purpose of our organizations coming together, so that we can have an outcome like your story. Your lived experience is important, and we thank you, Greg, and we continue to wish you great success, and as you continue to grow and develop, and may this just be the beginning of just so many new and exciting things. And thank you for allowing us to journey with you on behalf of Yonge Street Mission, on behalf of Children's Aid Society. We thank you for allowing allowing us to work with you.
Thank you for having me. And also I wanted to say thank you to the CAS for the challenges that also, helped me to develop my character, like have a stronger character. So I wanted to say thank you to them as well, because, I realized how important it is to be a parent, and the CAS kind of to realize that in a sense. So I just want to say thank you to them, and the YSM too, YSM as well.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. And one of the important pieces is mental health. So Donna Alexander, she is going to be sharing.
Sorry, Donna, we can't actually hear you. So are you able to unmute yourself?
Okay, I was muted by the organizer, so I thought the organizer would have been muted.
Okay, we can hear you now. Thanks so much.
Okay, yes, I was muted by the organizer, so okay, so I was saying that I was thanking Greg for speaking. So just a little bit about myself. So I am a social worker specializing in addiction and mental health, and I have the privilege of working primarily with Black families out of CAMH, especially in the ethno-specific program for Black youth. So I have this unique position, and I don't even know if Marcia knows this, but I started in this job in 2005, and I believe in 2007, a public health nurse that was volunteering out of Evergreen Center came to me and said to me, Donna, you need to be at Evergreen Center because there's so many Black youth that are there. And so I went and I spoke to the staff there, and we got a memorandum of understanding between CAMH and Evergreen Center. And I started working at first in the drop-in center, and then in the downstairs where we provided where medical services was provided. And what I've seen and what I see, what we see then and now, we worked with a lot of youth that had aged out of child welfare, and they were there. But what really impressed me was the level of care and the community and the sense of community that Evergreen Center provided to them. And the range of services from helping them to find a place to live, to dental care, to all different kinds of services, that really impressed me. And so when I was asked to speak, I couldn't say no, because I know firsthand the kind of services that's provided by Yonge Street Mission and by the staff at Evergreen Center specifically. And so, yes, in terms of mental health, the youth that are there, and I'm a social worker, so I work in both sides. I work usually with parents that have involvement within the child welfare system, but also with clients that have a long history of child involvement. So I work on both sides of the aisle. But I've been yes, we talk, the psychiatrist and I, we're usually there on Thursday afternoons, where we work out of the center providing mental health services. And yes, we provide all different we provide services to youth with depression, anxiety, all kind of psychotic illnesses, mood disorders, personality disorders, all of these things, right, that are natural, that are response to the stressors in their lives and to the lives, the unstable lives that they have lived so far. But I've always been impressed with the dedication and the care and the concern that the staff have shown. And for most of these youth, the first time I believe they've had a sense of community is in fact by through their involvement with YSM and with Evergreen Center in particular. And so, yes, you know, treatment of mental health is really important, but we also have to talk about the threats to mental health, right, for these youth in particular. And when we talk about, you know, the cultural erosion that they face as a result of being involved with the system, when we talk about the internalized racism, when we talk about the devaluation, when we talk about the social exclusion, the issues with racial and cultural identity, then this is why it's so important for a place like YSM to exist and to provide the kind of services that they do to these young people with these challenges that are trying to transition from child welfare and to go on and to build lives for themselves. And so I know firsthand, and so this is why I was excited about this partnership, because I know the work, I know firsthand, because I've worked with the staff, I've worked with the people there, and I know, I see for myself, and I see the dedication, and I see firsthand the kind of service. And so my expectation from this partnership is that the work will continue and that more families will have a chance to benefit from this, from the work that YSM is able to provide to them as they navigate their way moving forward out of the system and building these new lives for themselves. And so, you know, that's what I want to see, and just want to emphasize the need for culturally safe and culturally affirming care for these parents and for these families that are so vulnerable and so very, very underserved. And so I'm excited about the work going forward and intend to support in whatever ways I can. So I won't take up any more of the time. That's all I intend to say. So thanks very much for inviting me to speak.
Thank you, Donna. Really appreciate your time and joining us today. Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us on this beautiful summer night and for taking time out of your day to hear what we have to say. This really has been a spectacular partnership for the Children's Aid Society of Toronto and the work that we are doing with Yonge Street Mission. The title of this slide is Shifting the Narrative, and it really is a key point for us. One of the things as the Children's Aid Society is that we are responsible for the safety of children. And that is a responsibility that we take very seriously. But the question I think that all Children's Aid Societies in the sector of child welfare needs to be asking ourselves is, how are we keeping kids safe? What are we doing to ensure that kids are safe? And frankly, we should be reaching for a much higher bar, because our goal should not only be to keep kids safe, but it should be to allow kids to thrive. It should be allow families to thrive, and it should be allow children and families to achieve every success that they deserve. So we want to think well beyond safety and much more towards strengthening families and well-being and reaching maximum potential. Children's Aid Societies are in fact designed on this model of investigation, and that if you are worried about the safety of a child, you would call a Children's Aid Society, and that Children's Aid Society would then launch an investigation. So it's a very protection type of an approach to the work. And what we're noticing is that we want to change that narrative of protection to being proactive and looking at prevention. And the way that you practice prevention is by investing in families and building family systems and building family networks. Greg did a great job of talking about that in terms of the fact that he is now connected back to a system that he was never connected to before. We want to get away from this notion that we as the Children's Aid Society want to protect children from their families. And we actually want to build the notion that we want to help families protect their own children. And that is a huge shift for us. And the beauty of this partnership is that it allows us to do that. It allows us to invest in families in a way that we have not invested previously. Fact is, particularly when a Black family sees a child welfare worker, they become worried. Not too dissimilar to the way often Black families see the police, because the history tells us that child welfare has intersected with the Black community in ways that have introduced issues of disparity and disproportionality. So we do not have the same outcomes when we work with the Black community. What's beautiful about this partnership is that we are able to enter into the lives of families with Young Street Mission, walking hand in hand and showing families that we are offering more than investigation, but we're actually investing in them, and that we want to help them with issues of poverty. We want to help them with issues of parenting. We want to help them navigate a very complicated system of mental health, so that it shows that we believe in the strength of people, and the capacity of families to raise their own children, and for children to stay within their families. When we remove children from families, we may be dealing with a risk and finding a temporary solution. Fact is, we introduce a whole bunch of other type of risk that history has told us over and over again we're not very good at managing. We know the children that go up in care don't do well. We know they have poor outcomes, and we know that families experience trauma. And so we have 100 years of data that tells us this notion of investigation and removal doesn't work. But what we do know that works is investing in families. The important thing is that we want to understand and support the whole family. And this is so critical, and this is another reason why the partnership is so important, because every family has a system, every parent has a system. Our responsibility is to tap into that system and strengthen and support and build it. Build it by bringing people together, build it by building capacity of families to raise their own children, and building it by frankly increasing the network of people that fathers and mothers have, so that their supports increase. I have never met a parent that doesn't want to be successful as a parent, but real life issues of poverty, of underemployment, of mental health, of addictions are real life problems, and people do not need a system to judge them in terms of how they are dealing with their problems. What people need is belief in them that they will do well. People need to know that the system has their back and believes in them and supports them. And this is what we want to do as a Children's Aid Society. We want to move to proving and showing families that we work with that we are invested in them. And that is a long road that we have to walk, because there's a lot of history that we have to undo. But if you want to build strong families, and if you want to build strong communities, you don't do that by separating families and separating communities. You do that by investing in families, and you do that by building family networks and building family capacity. And that's what this program is doing. It's investing in families by helping families get the resources that they need and the tools that they need to ensure that their children can stay at home. We learn a tremendous amount from the people that we support. And I just want to take a quick second and thank Greg, because I think it takes a tremendous amount of courage to come and tell your story and make yourself vulnerable and talk about the struggles that you've had. And so when I listen to Greg talk, I continually learn. But the learnings are actually quite, in fact, simple. Learnings are that everybody wants to be successful. The learnings are that people need assistance and tools, and people need other people to believe in them, so that they can find the strength to move forward. And that's really what we want to do with this partnership, is to show families that we do believe in them, and to show families that we will invest in them, but we'll invest in them in a real way, through resources, through people, through programs, and by changing systems. The last thing I'll say is that we say that as an organization, we are here to serve. We are here to serve the children and families that need us the most. But the way that we serve is really what we want to be looking really hard at, to say the best way that we can serve our community is by building families and by building systems and by keeping families together. That's the way we serve our community. We do understand that child welfare has a different legacy, and that many people are fearful of the services that child welfare has offered, and particularly members of the Black community are fearful of the services that child welfare has to offer. And it is our responsibility to change that narrative. It is our responsibility to change that reputation. And you don't do it by talking, you do it through action. And that is why this program so far has been really successful, is that we are doing our best to show that we are tangibly trying to change systems. And Marcia said it very well when she said that we can't do it alone. You know, the safety and the well-being of vulnerable children and families in our community is not the responsibility of the Children's Aid Society. It is a collective responsibility. But it is our responsibility to reach out and find new partnerships and to forge new relationships so that we are a better integrated system and that we are a better coordinated system. And we will continue to work very hard to create system coordination and partnerships that benefit families and allow children to remain at home, that allow families to thrive, and where we hold ourselves accountable for the fact that we have intersected with the Black community in a way that has created disparate and disproportionate outcomes. And we are transparent about that disparity and disproportionality, and we will continue to make our data transparent and show people that we are on a genuine commitment to do better, and on a genuine journey to improve the lives of the children and the families that we serve. So I will stop there, and I will hand it back over to Marcia, who just did great, and she was so passionate. It was just so nice to hear her talk. And I will throw it back to her, who is a dear friend and a colleague. Thanks, Marcia.
Thank you, Mahesh. So as you've been hearing tonight, our whole purpose tonight is we want to build solutions for Black families. We want to see my community, our community, strengthened. And how we're doing that is through family-to-family mentoring. This is a unique aspect of our partnership, that when families are referred from, to CAS to us, and we work with the families and they become stable, we connect them to a family that will model healthy parenting. The call tonight is for the Black community to have an opportunity to rise up. So we welcome anyone and everybody, but tonight we're really looking for the Black community to rise up to become mentor families. What is that? How did this come about? As I mentioned to you earlier on, that I've worked with street involved youth, and there was a parent that I was working with that was getting support from us, and it was a long weekend. We're ready to close. She came to pick up her son from one of our programs, and she just had an emotional meltdown. And life is very stressful for many of our families that have to jump through hoops and have all these barriers to deal with. In the midst of her crying, and we were supporting her and encouraging her, she said, you know what, she appreciates the help that we are giving her. But at the end of the day, we're all going home to our families. We're going to be invited to people's houses or inviting people over to our own homes, and we're going to have family and sit down and have a beautiful meal and really enjoy the long weekend. She said, nobody is going to invite my son and us to their homes. At that point in time, as Mahesh mentioned, we're always learning. I learned about isolation. I learned about the need for community. And many of these families, what happens is that they become so isolated. So it's not just because of poverty, but stigma and fear. And I went home and it troubled my whole weekend. And while I was thinking and pondering, and as you know, we're a faith-based organization, I was praying for answers and hope and solutions. And that's when the thought of family to family mentoring came into my mind. And I really thank Young Street Mission for allowing this to be birthed. I did some research. There wasn't anything of its kind here, but we all know how much family has played a role in our lives, how much community has played a role in our lives, how much career mentors have played a role in our lives. And so that's where the journey began. And we sat down with the volunteer resources, and we mapped it out, and we did our research, and we launched 2 years ago family to family mentoring. And this is one of the things that we have been working on. And I just want to put it, Greg is one of those families, parents that are waiting for a mentor family. So we have families waiting, but we have a lack of Black families that are going to show their success and their passion for parenting, for really, their skills, their passion, their talent, their love for community. We need our own community to respond. In this piece, we're also needing, as Donna spoke, I really respect Donna for the work that she's doing. We do need mental health professionals that also represent our people. It's powerful that when we make a referral to a counselor, a clinician, or a psychologist or a psychiatrist, that when a Black parent walks into the room, they're seeing a representation of themselves. What does that mean? It means that when they share their pain, when they share their fears, when they share their struggle, they don't have to go into detail and explain certain things. There's an understood meaning because that person can relate to some of the challenges that they're facing because they are a person of color. They can identify with the systemic racism. They can identify with the barriers that biases do and being racialized does, and how poverty exasperates some of those things. We're making a call out to mentor families. We're making a call out to mental health professionals. And if you're not any of those, if you feel, no, I cannot be a mentor family, my life's busy, or I have 6 children of my own that I'm trying to mentor, that's okay. There's other ways to do it. There's a financial support. We need all the support. CAS has been great in support, providing CAS by believing in us and working with us and fostering this partnership through the foundation, Children's Aid Foundation. They were able to fund a full-time staff for us so that we can be effective with our wraparound care and support. So I want to say thank you. This is an opportunity for you to learn, share, take action, and to be an ally, a true ally that's here for the long haul, not just a knee-jerk reaction, but to really say, I'm committed to helping us heal as a Black community because we need each other. We have all been impacted by systemic racism. We have all been impacted by challenges of poverty. And so this is where we could collectively do something to change the narrative of our Black families. So thank you, and I appeal to you.
Great, thank you so much, Marcia. And I am aware that it's 8 o'clock, but we have some really amazing questions. So I'm hoping you can stick around for about 4 questions. So if we could have all the speakers, Donna, Marcia, Greg, back on camera. Nice to see you have your mask up, Greg. So I'm going to ask the first question, and this one is actually directed at Greg. So I think you mentioned this, but I think if you could elaborate a bit. So how do you feel the partnership has assisted in your growth as a father?
Can you repeat the question again? I didn't hear the...
Sure. How do you feel this partnership has assisted in your growth as a father?
How did I feel the partnership assisted in my growth as a father? Because the YSM had the programs available that at the time CAS, I guess, didn't have the staff to do the programs, but basically YSM had the Nobody's Perfect program and the Man-to-Man program, and that's how it assisted in me being able to be a great father.
Great. And Greg, these aren't questions, but I have to tell you the number of comments that I have on my side of people just saying how inspiring your story is. So thank you again for sharing.
Thank you.
And so this is probably aimed at Farrell or Mahesh. So does CAS of Toronto have other initiatives that address discrimination or the disproportionality of Black youth in care in your practice?
Yes, we do. I'll check if my mic's on. One or a couple that come to mind is our Capania program being run out of our Northwest branch, and it's a partnership with CAFCAN. And it focuses on supporting Black mothers, especially who've experienced trauma in their involvement with child welfare, etc. So that's one example.
Great. Mahesh, do you have any comment on that?
Lee, do you mind just repeating the question? Because I think there was something, a nuance in there. I just want to catch it. Can you just re-say the question one more time, please?
Sure. Just around if CAS of Toronto has any other initiatives that address discrimination in practice or the disproportionate number of Black children in care.
Right. So picking up on the word initiatives, I would say that we have heavily invested in our equity work. And so we now have an equity department. We have Farrell, who is the amazing and very talented director of that department. We have put anti-Black racism leads in each of our departments so that there's consultation available on very difficult cases. We have invested heavily in cultural safety training and implicit bias training and anti-Black racism training. And we are always looking at developing new partnerships within our Black community. And we have a community consultation table that comprises of professional members of the Black community who can really take a critical look at our work and give us advice and guidance in terms of what we need to do better. And that doesn't even begin to speak to the number of initiatives that we have specifically for our youth that are aging out of care. So we really do realize that that we have a commitment to equity work because the field of child welfare has impacted numerous marginalized populations in ways that we need to correct.
Great. Thank you so much to you both. This is a question that I think many people could answer, but I'm going to put it to you, Marcia, and just I think we have to be a little aware of time, but the question is, what do you think other social service providers can learn from this important partnership?
Not to be afraid of change, that it's important to hear and give space for our Black families to, without judgment, share their pain and struggle, to really be the ally that allows them to be themselves and empower them, to affirm them. So we've learned that we cannot do this alone, and we need more holistic wraparound supports. And we need to really connect our families to supports besides an agency, that the agencies do their work, but after the agency is out of the picture, we don't want a resurgence or them re-entering into the system because we did not recognize the need to build external supports. So like family to family mentoring, connecting them to and really building their confidence into employment and all those other pieces that stabilize families.
Great. Thank you so much. I think this was touched on, but perhaps Mahesh or Marcia, you could speak about this further. How did the partnership actually come to be? Because we talked about its structure, but how did it begin?
Mahesh, you want to answer that one?
Yeah, so I have to say that we are very blessed to have a foundation that is incredibly generous. And we are constantly looking at partners that can help us serve the Black community differently. One of the things that our research told us is that poverty intersects with child welfare, and poverty intersects with specifically with the Black families that we're working with. And we knew that Yonge Street Mission is a local organization that deals specifically with poverty. So we really saw a tremendous alignment between what we needed and what they were able to offer. And I think the relationship just grew organically through a number of different conversations. We have a number of directors and a number of supervisors in our organization that have worked very hard on the ground to make things happen. And I know that's also true with the staff at Yonge Street Mission. So after sort of realizing the need for us to offer a different solution to poverty, I think that the partnership just grew very organically into organizations that were committed to serving this population in a more meaningful way.
Great. Thank you so much. And I think we'll end on this question, and I think it's actually a great question to end on. So how do Black families involved with CAS of Toronto find out about the Yonge Street Mission, or pardon me, the Cornerstone partnership?
Sorry, can you
I'll yeah, so I think that all families that are involved with Children's Aid Society would have social workers that are managing their case, and I think that they should speak to their social workers specifically about the service that is involved. And I see Gregory shaking his head, which I really like, and I think that's
about to recommend.
Sorry, go ahead, Gregory.
No, I was about to say, yeah, if you have a social worker, you could probably ask them and see if they could look into it. Because my social worker actually referred me, so I had no idea about YSM at the time. But yeah, the best thing would be to ask your social worker about the Cornerstone program.
Wonderful. Thank you to you both. So to end this evening, and again, if we haven't gotten to your question, not to worry. We'll be following up with everyone over email in the next day or so. So thank you everyone for your questions. And Farrell will just be sending us off on a final message. And thank you to all of our speakers today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Lee. And honestly, thank you for everyone for participating. Thank you to the audience for sticking around with us to the end here. And everybody who knows me knows I end every presentation with a quote. So this one comes from the great author and professor Ibram Kendi. He's also the author of How to Be an Anti-Racist. And his quote is, "Being an anti-racist requires persistent self-awareness, constant self-criticism, and regular self-examination." So we as CAS of Toronto pledge to do better and keep on the self-examination work. So thank you for being with us tonight. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.